Yeah, my name is Steve Carey with Boulders Lions Academy out here in Keller, Texas. We have a private co-op collaboration homeschool where we do a co-op homeschool with MMA.
How did you get involved in this whole co-op situation?
Well, I started homeschooling my kids, and they participate at a very good gym here in Keller, a high level MMA gym for kids. And there's a group of parents that have the days free for themselves at middays. The midday slots where we were like, let's start training our kids in the middle of the day. Another part with that is just having a location for the other kids to socialize. So sometimes you homeschool your kids, are in the house all day. They don't have a lot of kids to socialize with. So it just kind of morphed into okay, let's let our kids socialize. They can homeschool together, train together, and do it at a midday session, which may free up some of the afternoon sessions or allow for those kids that want to have a second session in the afternoon, things of that nature.
So you started this homeschool at the beginning of this school year, correct?
I started it actually. Originally, we started it. My brother started this in California in San Juan Capistrano. We just opened here in Keller. Just this week was our first week in January,
Oh,
so it's been in the works, but we've just opened up um, Monday. So we're
wow.
just now getting it up and running.
So let's break down. I'm interested. I want to hear how you break down your day. Okay, so you just started. You said your brother had one. You had like a model of how it could be ran, and then you took it over here. How is the day broken down?
For us, the schedule is really convenient, and the way I tailored it here in Keller in Texas is really for a parent standpoint, to where parents are in control of their school in regards to the academics that they want their kids to choose, as well as giving them a loaded schedule to where they can pick and choose for jujitsu, wrestling, striking. They have options in the middle of the day, the afternoon sessions. So it's really adds a lot of flexibility to parents in the sense to where they may want to have dinner at 5 p.m. Well, if you're training and being consistent, your kid's probably in jujitsu Monday through Friday during those hours. So, we're not getting home till 7:30 sometimes. Now we have the option to where we're basically, if my kids can train at 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, that 5 o'clock slot might be optional, or vice versa. So it just adds a lot of flexibility to the schedules for training. But our day, it really is like Mondays through Friday. The morning up until lunchtime is where our kids will do their homeschool studies and just socialize and interact. So a lot of that, they'll get their homeschool done within a couple of hours, and then they have time to play foosball or ping pong or chess and do things like that, interact with each other, and then our midday training starts, which is a pretty full loaded schedule.
So so all of the academics is done from 8 o'clock to 12 o'clock. You said correct?
Yeah, we start at about 9 o'clock, but it's we most of our kids. There's a couple different homeschool programs, but most of them use a Celis, which is a very flexible program. It allows you to set the tone for your kid individually. So it's not based on what other kids. So if and also the time frame. So my kid may be finished with his session within an hour and a half. Some kids may finish sooner or later, but it also, if you have a kid that's in ninth grade and my kid's in seventh grade, it's not going to affect each other because it's individual based, if that makes sense. So they usually start at 9. They may come in a little bit later. It's really what's convenient for them. And once they're done, then they can socialize, hang out, and mess around with the other boys and girls.
So it's all online. The homeschooling is all online through the online program, and you don't have actual teachers inside your building.
We do. We kind of have a hybrid model where the CELIS program is the accredited part in the majority of the academic portion, and that is online. But we do additional things, which the parents tailor. So it's depending on what the parent wants them to do. So some of them have their kids doing other programs. There's a lot of individual programs for kids to choose from. For example, with me, I have my kids doing additional reading, additional writing. They do some Bible studies. They do typing, and I'm about to have them do an AI course for kids. So I can tailor it to what works for me and mine. And that's what all the parents do, which is the beauty of it. And we do have a teacher. We have credentialed teachers that come in a couple days a week and will make sure that the kids are excelling in their programs. So they're there to help with making sure that if we're pushing our kids to be 4.0 or get to the next level or get ahead, that's what they're there to help with. Or if kids have questions, answers, or get stuck, we have that there as well. So we kind of have a hybrid model, which gives you the both the best worlds.
That's
If that
awesome.
makes
And
sense.
how, yeah, it does. How many students are in your program?
Well, we just opened up, so we got a handful right now. I'd say I got about 8 this first week. Next week we'll probably double. It's becoming pretty popular. So I'm getting every day. You guys are open? You're open? When can I sign up? Which is good because starting any new business there's a lot of pressure and you want to make sure you're getting the numbers to float the boat. So I suspect within a couple of months we'll be busting out the seams here. It's pretty exciting.
Yeah, and how many students can you actually have in your program? What's the
You know,
max?
With the location I have, I'm probably going to start maxing out at 30 to 40, but I can expand that just by getting maybe expanding into the suite next to me as some options like that. So I think I'm probably going to run into that problem, God willing, and it's a good problem to have. The gym that we're partnering with is a very successful gym. The coaches are very high level. I mean, it's not like your kid's going to karate and getting a participation belt in 2 months. It's high level jujitsu, high level wrestling, striking, strength and conditioning. And these guys have been around the game for a while. They're probably some of the top coaches in the North Texas. So very successful program that I partner with, which makes it exciting, which honestly is the vast majority of kids are signing up for that is because they know they get to train in the middle of the day. They got a big competition team that's very successful. So, and these guys are great. So now we have kids that are like, I can get 2 sessions in a day. Like for example, today my kids were able to get Jiu-Jitsu, boxing, and now they're doing their wrestling, and that's just one day.
That's
Tomorrow will be the same thing. They'll have no gi, striking, strength, and conditioning. So it's a lot of training. And some of us, I'm a little bit of a diehard. My kids are doing 2 sessions for the most part, but someone would just pick and choose, like, hey, we'll do the midday and maybe the afternoon will be optional or vice versa. And that's the whole concept.
it sounds amazing. It sounds amazing. It sounds like you could get your studies done. You have a credentialed teacher that comes here once in a while. It's a
Right.
small, there's only you said maxing out 30 students right now currently. You only have 8 students. And then, you get to socialize once you finish your work, and then now it's the training time. Now it's time to do the jujitsu, the striking. That sounds wonderful. And then you could get home at a reasonable time. Like, I know for me, with my kids, they played baseball. They played
Mhm.
baseball, and so they had after school baseball practice for the travel ball teams. When we got to high school, it's high school baseball. So it was just like nonstop. It was like school, quick eat of dinner, and then straight to practice for a couple of hours, and that happened every night. And we get home 8 o'clock, 8 p.m. every night, and it was just on repeat over and over and over. And it took up a good portion of our day. Sounds like you could get in your striking and your wrestling and be home by 4 o'clock or something like that.
Yeah, our midday program's done by 3:30, and that's
Yeah.
exactly. I mean, the things of having a dinner family together as a dinner, things of that those nature, things like that have really become kind of far few in between,
Yeah.
especially for parents with athletes, and that's tough. That is tough because I experienced the same thing. We used to eat at 6 o'clock, 5 o'clock. Now it's where especially if you're in a public school and you got an hour worth of homework and you're a student athlete, you come home at 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, and you trying to force down food, homework, and a shower just to get back up and repeat the rat race. So it's really beneficial in that aspect. And having grappling, the high level grappling for kids, which is something I've learned over the last few years. I'm such a fan of that. I mean, it just gives them so much confidence and self esteem, and I believe that if you have your kids with high self-esteem and confidence are less likely to be followers, to make dumb decisions. Sure they're not going to be perfect. Sure they're going to come across those situations and things like that. But it just you're better equipping them for those situations in life, if that makes sense.
It does. Is that
Yeah.
one of the reasons why you created this? Is just to be able to create an environment where your own kids and other kids could just thrive and be successful? Is that one of the reasons why you created this thing?
100%. You know, but I'd have to give the credit to my twin, Peter, who really quarterbacked this thing in California. That's what he did for his kids, and his nephews, which are my kids. We're identical twins, so being able to be involved there and have my kids in that, I seen the benefit of it. I was loving seeing my kids boxing and going down to the gym, and we can train with the coaches and box while our kids were boxing at the same time. And really back in 2021 or 2020 when the pandemic was cracking out there, everything was shut down. But he kept the gym open, and so it flourished because everybody shut down even against the rules. We kept it open and kept it pushing. So we had people coming from everywhere because there was like, here's a place your kids can go and train. And I
Yeah,
just really saw the benefit and was enjoying that, seeing my kids are getting tough. They know how to box and are learning this stuff. And I just kind of copied that concept. And obviously being close, with family, once I was out here in Texas, it didn't take long for me to start thinking, why don't I just do the same thing here? I got my kids going to school, they get home, and I was doing the same thing you are. Just they get home, I'm rushing to shove something down their throat, rush them off to practice, rush them home from training,
hmm,
feed them shower homework,
hmm,
and it's stressful. So, once I got into homeschooling, which I was a little reluctant at first, I was like, I'm not going to have the patience to homeschool my kids. I'm going to probably be choking them in 10 minutes. I got twins myself. They're very hyperactive. Um, but, and I started doing it. I realized it wasn't what I thought it was. It's very manageable. Celis, that particular program, I don't have to be involved that much. It's pretty much, it does a big portion of it. I stay on top of it, make sure my kids are getting, they're keep maintaining the expectations that I have for them with their studies or whatnot. I give them the extra stuff, but I'm not as involved like a teacher in a classroom in a sense. It really
yeah,
does the majority of the work for me. And now I get to be a bigger influence on my kids. I have more time to spend with them, and they're training more. And we're not rushing around in rush hour, stressing to get here or there on time or worried about traffic. So there is a lot of benefits for it. And I did it very from a selfish parent point of view. It's really what I did it for them, just to be able to have that type of freedom. So I'm loving it. So it's been a
yeah.
blessing for me for sure.
I had a guest on here, and he explained that he was trying to get jujitsu in public schools, and there's been extreme pushback. When he's every time he goes and he talks to the board and he tries to push his this idea, he always gets shut down. And he's been on multiple podcasts, including mine,
Mhm.
and he's really trying to put jujitsu in public schools. And like you were saying, his thing is like the confidence builder that jujitsu has on a young mind. Um, that's why he's trying to do it, just for that reason, that confidence that all young men, young women need. And it's such a pushback for him. Why do you think it's so hard for jujitsu to be in public schools?
I don't know. I think it would be fantastic. I mean, to me, it's such a no brainer that once you experience it, you can see it. It's difficult, I think, at first when you're not familiar with it because you're seeing your kid's going to get broken down, but he has to get built up from that. It comes with a lot of tears, especially if you're training and competing at a gym that's going to really push them. Um, but man, what a blessing it is to see my kids have to do that young. And it's difficult. You watch your kids struggle, break down, but they build into something stronger. With the public schools, the only thing I can imagine, as much as I think that would be fantastic, it would probably help with bullying and so many things, especially with the young girls. In my opinion, there's not a better self defense out there for women than jujitsu. But I would say for public schools, it's probably the liability.
Yeah,
But yet they have wrestling, and
yeah,
wrestling is probably a lot more dangerous
football.
than
They got
jujitsu.
football.
Yeah.
They got
So,
football, they got wrestling, and those, you got concussions in football, you got broken
mhm.
limbs, and wrestling is just as, just like jujitsu, I would say. It's pretty
Yeah,
close, pretty
our
close.
our our middle child just graduated from high school and went straight into the Marines, and he did very good at wrestling. He's wrestling over here at a high level, and those are some intense matches. It's a much more. I think you're going to be much more injury, likely to sustain an injury in wrestling than you are in jujitsu and football. Like you say, I would agree with that 100%.
And you look at the top, you look at MMA, you look at the UFC, some of the top, individuals have a wrestling background. Those guys from Dagestan, those guys are killing it over there. They're just elite. They have a wrestling background. So, but yeah, I think that public schools will definitely benefit from having jujitsu in public schools. But again, I agree with you. It's the liability portion, definitely the liability portion.
Yeah, but your point about them, you have wrestling and football. Why not jujitsu then? I don't know. You know, you're less likely to, I guess, in jujitsu, you're purposely trying to put somebody in a position where you're going to either, black them out or break a limb or something like that. So you definitely have to have some restraint and maybe not necessarily, but that probably is where you're getting to a gray area versus wrestling. You're trying to put somebody on their back and things of that nature.
Yeah.
But it comes with some big dumps and some slams and stuff. So
hmm
I don't know. I don't know.
Is there a religious aspect toward your homeschool? Is there some? Because I did see a Bible verse when I went on the website.
Yeah, because I'm a Christian, it's Christian owned and operated, and it's not I wouldn't say that we're in there teaching the Bible or anything like that. I do have my kids study the Bible, but it's not a Christian school in that aspect. But it's pretty clear you come there, it's Christian owned and operated. With me, that's it's God first and God above everything, and that's how I raised me and mine. So when you open a business like this, it takes a lot of, you got to be a water walker, is what I say, man. You really got to walk by faith, and if this is what the Lord's going to have me do, I'm gonna do it 100%. So
Yeah.
that's kind of what I feel I've been led to do out here right now, and so I'm all in, and so very faith based. But yeah, I'm not teaching the Bible or anything like that. But don't give me any ideas. I might start injecting that and stuff like that. But I do I do have some studies like that. But I let the parents pick and choose. But I think most of families. I mean, we have a pretty tight knit community here, and most of them that are joining up are doing stuff very similar. So it's a pretty big Christian community as well. But it's open to anybody. We're not selling that in a sense.
You chose Proverbs 28:1. That's what you chose when I went on
Mhm.
there. I saw Proverbs 28:1 when it was say
Yes, sir.
the wicked flee though no one pursues, but the righteous are bold as a lion. And your thing is bold as a lion, correct?
That is correct, and it was my brother that chose that. We're the offspin of the parent chapter in California, and I'm a fan of that verse, and that's you want your kids to be confident, and you don't want your kids to flee from wickedness or to be fearful, and that goes hand in hand with teaching them how to box, how to grapple, how to wrestle. So it's for me, it's a perfect verse. It's very fitting for what we do.
Yeah, I like that. I do like that verse. The wicked flee though no one pursues. That's that idea in my mind of you're guilty. You've been doing some things you shouldn't be doing. You don't have a clear conscience. So even
Mhm.
though nobody's pursuing you, even though nobody's pressing you, you're still like not right. You don't have your just conscience is not clear. But those that are righteous, those that are that are confident, those that are doing the right things are just bold as a lion because they know they have a clear conscience. And that's
Yes,
and
sir.
I just even if you weren't faith based, even if you don't believe in God or whatever, just that idea of a clear conscience, you're gonna be bold as a lion if you're doing the right things.
Yeah, sure. If you're not guilty, you're not worried about it.
You ain't worried about anything. If
Yes,
your
sir.
intentions are good and you're just doing what in your mind is the right thing to do, then why worry? There's no need to
Yes, sir.
worry, you know?
It's a good
So
point.
yeah, so when I saw that, I was like, "Oh, that's a good verse right there." I really like that verse.
Yeah, I'm a fan of it. I think it really does complement what we're doing. So he picked a good one for sure.
Definitely. How would you how if you did include more faith into this program, how would you do it?
I actually did talk to a buddy of mine who's in the ministry, and I'm thinking about doing something like that on Friday. So our kids really have a heavy training schedule Monday through Thursday. Friday is more of a bonding day where they can watch a movie, or we may go to the park and do things of that nature. We're still kind of new here in Texas where we've opened up, but that's really what we'll be doing on Fridays. We'll be doing stuff like that. But I'm thinking about, having him coming down and maybe doing some lessons or things of that nature, just to start to put the word of God in some of these young men and women. You know, I'm responsible for me and mine in my household. So I have my kids doing their studies and stuff like that. But I think sometimes when it's coming from dad, you gotta play chess and be. I gotta be
Yeah.
tactical in a sense because I don't want it to become I'm doing this because mom and dad are telling me or making me. It's like, hey, this is what we do. And, develop your relationship with your heavenly father. You
Mhm.
develop your relationship with him. When you're in the privacy of your shower or something, don't forget to pray. Or before you go to bed, you pray too by yourself. So I'm trying to install that system with my kids to where they can have their own relationship. They're young. Having another individual come in and teach them as well is just another aspect of it in a sense to where it's not dad telling me to do this, or they're not getting confused with I have to do this, but I want it to be something that they, you know, want to do and that they have that relationship. So I probably will eventually have my buddy come down and do studies with the kids, and he's got the personality for it, and he'll probably do a great job, make it fun, and these kids will learn. And now they're getting it from their personal stuff, they're getting it from their dad, and then they have someone else that's also teaching them the word, and you can't beat that. That's more important than anything, in my opinion. So.
Y Absolutely. I don't really hear about homeschooling really, like, this is you're the first person that has come on my podcast and talked about homeschooling. This is my 3rd year doing this podcast, and nobody's talked about homeschooling. I don't know any individuals really who have homeschooled their own kids. So this is all new to me, what you're talking about. Um, how would you say that homeschooling is better than, in your opinion, public school or just a private school, a bigger private school?
It's a good question. You probably can ask 10 people and get 10 different answers on that. But me personally, homeschooling is new to me. I just started doing it this year. And I wish, now that I'm in it, I wish I would have done it earlier.
How many
I
kids you got?
just, we got 5 boys, but I only got the two twins that are 12-year-old that are still in the house.
Okay.
And they all went through public school except my two twins who did up until 5th grade. They're in 6th grade now, and this is when I've been homeschooling them. But if I could rewind time, I would have done it all the way, probably up until high school. So I know a lot of people are like, I don't want my kids to go to a public school because they're teaching them some funky stuff now, and you have a lot of confusion that's been injected in there. And you have these, a lot of it's teaching your kids just to be, stifling their creativity. You have that whole side of it, um, which there's a lot of good argument for. Are they, is it indoctrination camp, so on and so forth. The biggest thing for me, though, personally, my biggest fear at first was, will I be able to do it? Am I going to have time to teach my kids? That was my biggest fear, my first concern. Second was really the socialization part of it. But I quit once I transitioned over to having them homeschool. Luckily enough, I did do a lot of research, and I found that Acellus, which does a lot of the work for me, and then I can add on to it. I can pick and choose what's going to work for me. I get to choose what I want my kids to learn. Um, but going back to my point, I got a habit of going off on a side tangent a little bit. But going back to my point is the socialization part of it. My kids were starting to hang out with kids that I probably didn't want them hang out with. They'd come home and they're singing stuff and rapping some songs. I'm like, strike that from the household. We're not bumping that here. And their personalities are starting to change a little bit because they're so young and impressionable. They're starting to get into the social aspect at the private or public school. And maybe some of these other kids are the way they're acting's rubbing off on my kids. And
Yeah.
so I noticed that mainly, fifth, fourth, fifth, seeing that fourth, 5th grade starting to see that happen. And I don't think that it would happen as much if they were homeschooled because
Yeah.
I would have been a bigger influence or, my family or whatnot. That's the one thing for me, which I don't hear a lot about that I think was sold me on it to where I wish I would have done it earlier. I think if you have your kids early enough and you're homeschooling them in the younger ages, by the time they get to high school, you've installed your foundation and your morals, your family culture, how you want your kids to be. Their characters are starting to develop under your influence. And by that time, they start to get to where they're 14, 15, 16, and they want to go to a public school. You probably got a good firm grip on that foundation you've laid. So doing it earlier for me is, in my opinion, is probably, I wish I would have done that. It's probably a good route. You can tailor their academics. You can see what you want. You can pick what they want to learn. You're avoiding a lot of the other stuff, but you can really be a big part of their character and how you want them to be or how their character is going to develop. I think a lot of people struggle with the social aspect of it though too, because
Yeah.
I do notice a lot of the homeschool parents, they're like their kids, they're on their kids. They don't let their
Yeah.
kids out of their sight. And I can
Yeah.
understand that. I'm starting to become that way a little bit. And I'm like, wait a minute. I kick my kids out the house, make them ride the bike. I can't see them going around the street and stuff. But they're 12 now and they're with each other and stuff. But I'm also learning like I don't want to get like that. I definitely keep an eye on them, but I got to be able to let go a little bit, let them be out there and interact with other people without me just being on there, watching them and babysitting them like under a microscope, if that makes sense. So
It does
I'm
make
starting to
sense.
see that.
Yeah, I think that would be the pushback where, the social aspect part, the
Mhm.
helicopter parenting part where they always have their parent there, like you were saying, they're always there making sure, did you listen to the right music? Did you and you're making these choices for your own kids, and they're not really making their own choices because their parents are just saying, "No, this is what you're gonna read, this is what you're gonna listen to, this is the curriculum." This is, the friends you could only talk to this person. This is the small little group that we're gonna hang out with, and we're gonna be in this bubble of this is us. This is our bubble right here. And
Mhm.
you're never really exposed to all the other stuff in the world. And then when they get exposed to all the other stuff in the world, when they're finally out there, you got that whole Catholic school mentality, Catholic school girl mentality where now they're exposed to the world and now they're just going wild and buck wild and they're just like, like, because they never were exposed to it early on. So playing devil's advocate, I think that would be the pushback to homeschooling, um, in my mind.
That's a good point because it's kind of like I mentioned. I noticed that from a lot of the homeschool parents when I first started homeschooling because I wasn't like that. I dropped my kids off and I would see them at 3 o'clock. I didn't think about it too much. You worry about your kids sometimes naturally, but
Yeah.
I didn't think about it. They're at school, whatever, whatever. They come home off the bus and we'll keep it pushing. And I started when I'm homeschooling, I started to notice myself starting to be a little bit like starting to become that a little bit of that helicopter parent. I think having them in sports and things of that nature, what be it football, soccer, or any other activities around other kids, is definitely helps with that because they're having to interact with other kids, being a part of a team, and that's a big benefit for homeschooling. If you parents that do choose to homeschool, get them involved in the sport or whatnot. I'm going to be sound biased and say get them involved in grappling and things of that nature. But yeah, I think any sport will help with that. What we do also, the co-op, right away, you can see that how that benefits. So we got some of these parents to drop their kids off, and they're not in the classroom for 6 or 7 hours. We have a big room, and they're doing their stuff for a couple hours. Then they're goofing off with each other, and their parents aren't really there. Obviously, we have an admin and teacher on site. We have adults there to make sure that they're being
Yeah.
supervised, but and it's a small group. So we're not, it's not like a public school with hundreds of kids and stuff like that. It's a small group. Eventually we might get 30 kids and have to open up a second a suite next to us and get another more space and start separating, keeping them a little bit more closer to their ages and stuff, which would be a
Yeah.
good problem when we get to that point. But they get to interact with other kids and they're playing foosball. We do a chess competition and they love that. I give them a little money to whoever wins the chess competition. And they're doing board games and be playing ping pong and pool and things of that nature without the helicopter parent in a sense. So right away, I seen that being beneficial for my kids because they started speaking their own language at the house. Over the break, they're twins and they're just around each other and they're in their house. And I'm like, man, I need to get these kids outside and interacting.
Right.
So the co-op is a big benefit to that. It kind of offsets a lot of that, and then they jump right into training with the same group of kids, so they're making friends and like with like-minded kids that have the same interests and the same type of studies and stuff like that. So definitely some good points and things to consider if you are going to homeschool versus a public school. You got to weigh all that in the fact, weigh all that in the balance.
I think that the co-op thing though, tips the scale in homeschooling because without the co-op that you were talking about, it's just you and your child inside the house, going over some things. But you have a building, you have other kids, you have a program, they interact with other kids, and then there's the physical aspect, the grappling, whatever, the striking. I think
Hmm.
that portion, in my mind, if when I hear you talk about this, I'm like, well, that's why I would choose a program like yours because of that co-op aspect, where there's other kids there. I could take my kids to this other place where there's other kids and they could interact, like you're saying, play ping pong, pool, and all chess and all that stuff, get their studies done, but then they could interact and stuff like that. So that's a plus for your program, I think.
Yeah, I love it, and I designed this, as a parent for my kids. So that's the mindset with the whole thing, and it's again, it's a few hours a day. It's a few
Yeah.
hours a day, so you still have the benefit of being around your family for the majority of the day. But now you can drop your kid off at 9 a.m. and pick them up at any time you want or whatnot. The homeschooling flexibility with the program too really allows, like, you might not come every day. You may only come twice a week or 3 times a week. We do have some diehard kids that train that compete at a high level that will literally be looking to drop their kid off and pick them up after this second session in the afternoon, and their kids are getting, wrestling, jujitsu, no-gi, boxing. They're getting a whole
Yeah.
day of, but those particular kids, they love it. They wanna do that.
Yeah.
You got some kids that are just itching to train like that,
Yeah.
and you can see it. That's why they're at such a high level. Some of them just wanna, do their jujitsu, then get on with it, and we have those options, man. It's flexible, so it's designed for the parents.
What about food? Like, is it the parents bringing hot meals to their own kids? Is that how it goes?
Yeah, you bring your lunch, and my kids are eating a lot more right now. I just noticed that because they're not in front of they're not sitting in front of a TV or watching YouTube or
Mhm.
nothing. They literally there's the only screen time they're really getting is the Acellus program in the morning to do the academics, and then they're reading and book reading, and they're typing, doing a typing program on their laptop, but it's pretty limited. So they're eating a lot more because they're being a lot more active. So they bring their own food. But we're in a shopping center and stuff. So if need be, we can always run and grab food. But they're all bringing food. Fridays we'll be doing stuff like barbecue and a movie, potluck. We'll be doing things of that nature too, because that'll be our bonding days. But yeah, that's just this week we just started, and I'm finding out real quick. I need to pack more snacks and stuff because my boys are eating a bunch
Oh,
more.
yeah.
So
Oh, yeah, to
yeah,
burn the calories of all the training they're doing.
yeah, and they're running around and stuff. So I think sometimes your kids, if you allow your kids to sit there say I run a tight ship on the weekdays. I don't let them do any Xbox, and they don't have phones or anything like
Mhm.
that yet. They are pretty much, it's a tight schedule on the weekdays, keeping them busy. On the weekends, they got the grades where I'm happy with. I let them do their Xbox and have their fun. I give them their little freedom. But if I let them, they'll zombie out. They won't eat. They'll just
Oh, yeah.
zombie out in their room, and I'll be like, "Hey, what have you eaten today, dude?" And or
Yeah.
so I got to be on top of them, make sure I'm like, okay, it's 12 o'clock, 2 o'clock, something. Pause, eat. But if I don't, they'll just zombie out for 8 hours, and they probably wouldn't even eat. So you definitely you got things like that that you learn real quick, which I've been learning real quick. You got to be on top of it.
Let's talk about the training aspect. So
Mhm.
we talked about everything, but we haven't gotten detail about the training. So
Sure.
after 12 o'clock, whatever, you have different sessions. How does that work?
They're about 12 or 12:30, depending on the day. They'll jump right into grappling, which alternates. It's jujitsu one day, wrestling the next day. Jujitsu then wrestling, and then after that, there's a break where they're going to eat and hang out for an hour or so, and then it's going to be strength and conditioning or striking, and that's their day. So it's really to keep them busy till about 3 o'clock, and then they're free to go home. Some of them will come back to the second sessions, which is a whole nother, depending on what the gym's going at, what the gym schedule is. But the gym we co-op that we collaborate with here, it's called All American MMA here in Keller, and it is probably the top gym in the area, in my opinion.
Mhm.
Sorry if you can hear the train in the
It's okay.
background or
It's okay.
whatnot. But
Yeah.
yeah, I when I first moved out here, um, I was going to a gym that was a very good MMA gym. They had pro fighters there, a lot of police, a lot of solid guys that were training there. And I went there, I was like, man, this is great. But a few weeks into it, I realized my kids probably not the most kid oriented facility. What really wasn't focused on the kid program. Had a great kid program, but it wasn't really what their niche was. So when I moved over here to Fort Worth, man, I went to every gym around here just to see what I can get them involved in. Now, most of them are either wrestling or jujitsu. Not a lot of them did both. And I really think that they really complement each other. They really enhance each other. So I was really looking for a place that did both. And when I came here, man, they had like 3 black belts on the mat, high level jujitsu coaches, and they had the
Yeah.
wrestling coaches are very high level wrestling coaches. So I was sold right away. And their parents, you can tell that they were experienced. And I'm like, hey, do you guys have competition team? They kind of looked at me like, you don't know? And they have probably the top competition team around, So I'm very glad I got plugged in here. I'm very grateful for that, which is why I was like, man, it led to me thinking I need to do what my brother's doing. I got a very successful gym here that's got the top coaches. Can I get something cracking with them to where, now I can, from a parent point of view, I got, man, I can pick and choose when I can bring them. And that's kind of what led to what we got going on now. So very grateful for these
That's
guys.
awesome.
And I can, man, I can brag about them all day, but they're solid. Definitely.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So Steve, we're coming here toward the end of the podcast. Is there anything else like that you want to say about your program to let our viewers know about it? Anything else you want to mention about the program, where it's at, how they can get in touch with you, or anything that you want to say about your program?
Yeah, yeah, and first of all, I appreciate you having me on the podcast and give me a chance to talk about what we got going on over here. And we are in Keller, Texas, which is North DFW area, Fort Worth area. Um, Anybody wants to get in touch with us. Our website is bala-ntx.com, which is just Boulders Lines Academy, North Texas. So bala-ntx.com, and give us a shout, check us out, especially if you're homeschooling around in this area. You can come check us out for a week or so, and no obligation, just to see if it's a fit for you. And most of the parents, that the more they find out about and feel, we're very flexible in regards to, they can tailor their program and do what they like to do, whether if it's just the jiu-jitsu portion or the wrestling portion or everything. I'll work with all of them. So it's really designed by parents for parents, you know. So I'm excited. We're copying off of the my brother's program in San Juan Capistrano, which is just Boulders Lines Academy out in California. Very similar. They got a great facility there that they train at with, and I think they're expanding as well. So that's it's something we're hoping that we can grow and just keep pushing into the future. So it's fantastic for us.
Perfect. Well, Steve, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I greatly appreciate your time and you sharing about your program and giving your take on homeschool, which is something I haven't had on this podcast at all. So thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Yeah, appreciate the opportunity. Thanks for your time, Joe.
No problem.